Hey everyone, my name is Em, and I'm here to talk to you about making a space for suicide. What if I told you that holding a space for someone by connecting to your own pain could save both of your lives? 13 years ago, I lost my only brother to suicide, and the first few years I spiraled, trying to save everybody that came across my path. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want to talk to someone? I refused to let anyone else lose someone in such a horrible way. And then I tried to talk to people. I wanted to share my brother's story. I wanted to tell people how horrible it was and what I had gone through. But people don't really want to talk about it. And I connected with people who had lost someone. That was a great validation for me, but there was a disconnect between people that had suicidal ideation or had attempted and were still thankfully here, and people that just could not relate at all. And I had to figure out why that was. I needed to figure out why there was a disconnect. And I realized I hadn't dug up all of my own trauma. It wasn't just about the loss of my brother. Before all of that, as a teen, I was sexually assaulted. And in that aftermath, I attempted to take my life very severely. My little brother and sister found me. And at that moment, the trajectory of our lives changed forever, and we just didn't realize it. And it was after that event that, looking back now, I realized I should have opened a conversation with my siblings about suicide, and I didn't. I was scared. It felt too painful. What I didn't realize is that the idea of that pain is so much more painful than the actual process of moving through it. Our minds put a level of physical trauma on pain that is actually partially psychological. I was too afraid, so I never told them about my dark moment that day, about wanting to no longer be here. And I think, just my personal opinion, that having that conversation with my brother specifically could have saved his life. My name again is Mary Angela Abeo, and I'm the creator of the Faces of Fortitude movement. However, if you would have told me 3 years ago, Mary Angela, you're going to be a professional photographer and artist and public speaker, I would have laughed you off of any platform. So what in that time changed? I didn't go to school, I didn't take classes, I didn't pay for training. Here's what I did do. I took time and I dug deep. I grasped my story and my trauma and all of its painful roots, like one of those weeds in your garden, and I pulled at them all, gently, using them to grow myself. And I redirected that energy so it stopped feeding my pains and instead started feeding my needs. I needed to figure out how my suicide attempt and the events that followed in the next 2 decades built the blueprint for my mental health journey, and how certain conscious choices I've made over the years have affected others. So one day, I grabbed an old camera. It was sitting in my closet. My father-in-law gifted it to me. And I set up a tripod and I took a self-portrait. I decided I needed to take photos of how I processed pain because I was having a hard time finding words for it. I wanted to show what my stage of trauma and grief looked like because everybody processes so differently, right? And I discovered something magical happens when we sit for an extended period of time with our pain. To start, I was determined to find out why I hated photos of myself, especially in vulnerable states. I mean, listen, I can tell you reasons that I've heard from other people. Because, let's be real, none of us like photos of ourselves, right? I've heard I'm an ugly crier. I've heard my eyes get all red and puffy. Or there's a lot of snot. And the saddest one I've ever heard, no one wants to see all that. I faced my fears of being in front of a camera and sat and took my own portrait and revisited my traumas. I hated how I looked in photos at this point in my life specifically. But I was determined, and I thought about my sexual assaults. I spoke every detail out loud in a studio by myself. I used a remote to take my photos as I talked. I walked through the day I attempted to kill myself. Every pill that went into my mouth. Did I want to die? No, but I needed to erase the pain. I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't want to be there. I felt unheard, unseen, and so much shame. It was unbearable. It took me a few hours to get a tolerable shot because I hated photos of myself. And when I posted my final self-portrait online, I wrote about my loss and attempt and released it to the world, and something incredible happened. It created an open space inside my chest where that trauma used to live. And it opened my words that sometimes were guarded in triggers and pain, into open air. I know this sounds wild, but pain sounds different and has a different trajectory when it moves outside of our heads. When it's spoken outside of our bodies, outside of places where we are used to speaking about it, like therapy or a doctor's office. When that happens, a unique phenomenon happens. Those feelings can bounce off other people who, if they're willing and open, can let it connect to their similar pains and traumas and things that make us feel similar to each other, that we both have experienced similar pain. And we're immediately not just validated. Something happens with those raw responses of the other person holding that space for us. I want to show you what this looks like in real time, okay? This is Jenna. She's a face in my project, so beautiful. She told me her horrible story of sexual assault, abuse, and suicide attempt during her photo session with me. And my sessions are simple conversations between two people touched by suicide in any way, and we bond and we share stories, and I pull quotes and photos. I always open my sessions with my own story because, let's be real, you are not going to share the deepest, darkest, most horrible moments in your life with a total stranger unless you know that they've been in a similar situation. So I have to get vulnerable first. It's the only way it works. So as I'm telling my story, talking about the details of my sexual assault, the gaslighting, the pain around it, I watched Jenna have a reaction. I watched her process go through stages. First, her eyes got wide and her eyebrows lifted and her shoulders dropped. I immediately made a mental note that she had connected to something right then. Then she started to nod her head, and then you know that feeling when you start crying and you kind of shake it off, and then I saw tears in her eyes. I knew from experience this was Jenna taking herself back to that event in her life and reliving it. I could tell she was ready to share with me. After a few years of reading body language, I knew I needed to hold the door open very gently for Jenna in that moment and give her the space that she had just recently held for me. Because entering that space is scary, especially when you feel yourself going there before your brain is ready. Jenna started to explain what she connected with in my story and then started to tell me her own. And as she talked, I was sure to react. This is so important. I want you all to understand how important this is. And when I say react, I mean I reacted. I did not edit. I did not act like I was a professional. I was a peer with pain. That's all. In that moment, she needed a peer. If I felt shocked, I showed her shocked. If I felt sad, I showed her sad. I used words that explained how I was feeling. My eyes were wide, my hands were over my mouth, hand on chest, gasping. This is so horrible. I'm so sorry. Jenna, that must have been so scary. Holy crap, what a warrior you are to have survived that. Because it's in those moments that people realize, oh shit, they get it. Yes, it was horrible, and this person sees it. It's in those moments that the survivor is able to see just how terrible their trauma was. and see it through the reflection of your eyes. They see how valid their reactions have been no matter what they've been told. I've read that the side effects of trauma are created in a horrible event because our minds and our bodies can't exist at the same time because the trauma is so big. So they have to be separated. We have to make a separate space for that trauma so we can process it when we're ready. Because of that, our minds can often, we can gaslight ourselves. We can have feelings of disbelief and undervaluing our entire experience. First, because people around us maybe do that to us, but then we do it to ourselves. And it's so sad because society tells us we have to do that in order to make our experience palatable. That's tragic to me. When we create this space for someone and react as a peer and genuinely feel their trauma, we are opening that compartment for them and lovingly showing them it's okay to feel those pains and difficult feelings. So right then is when I told Jenna what I felt in my heart about what she had just shared. I told her that she was a warrior and a survivor of a horrible experience, and that her courage to share inspired me. Jenna looked at me. Woo! It's gonna make me cry, y'all. Jenna looked at me and started crying. She said, "You called me a survivor. I'm crying because I've never been called that, only a victim." And that's when I snapped this photo. I do this in all of my sessions, not because it helps me get the shot, because for me, these pictures are an afterthought. The final photos really don't matter to me. I'm doing this because as an attempt and loss survivor, I've seen healing in every session I have, not just in the person that's sharing with me, but also in myself. For me, Faces of Fortitude is about the conversations. Like with Jenna, I was able to see physical healing happening between both of us. It was a moment of light, of release, of clarity. We were just two people connecting at our deepest pains. And we didn't just validate each other, you all. It was like a beautiful dance where you share these things and you open up this compartmentalized pain and you place it gingerly and gently in front of you both so it can start to heal. So you're probably thinking, this sounds super easy. How am I supposed to dig out my trauma? My trauma is really painful and I don't even know how to do it. Maybe you don't have a therapist. Maybe you can't afford one. You don't have that possibility. You don't know how to move through this yourself. It's difficult. It's super valid for you to say that, first of all. It's very difficult. How you implement this in your life and how you creatively create this space can spread across personal life, friend circles, work, teams, everything. In order to make sure the idea now is to make sure that everybody that comes in contact with you knows that you are the authentic person that will hold a real, vulnerable space with them with no time limit if they need it. So over the years, I've watched people and I've created these steps in order to help dig up, recognize, unpack, and process these spaces for ourselves. And I wanted to share those with you. Now, anybody who knows me or follows me on social media knows that I'm quite the earthy plant parent, as you can see behind me. So my steps are appropriately plant themed because plants actually deal with trauma very similar to us, and they are a great model as to how to listen to ourselves. So step 1, dig with courage. It's really easy to look at somebody and go, "You gotta dig deep, buddy," when you're standing on a platform looking down at them. But it's really important to get into the dirt and figure out what's going on. So for me, I like to get dirty. It's about being courageous and digging deep, even though you have tons of excuses to not do so or to stop. Sometimes it even can feel like we're digging up old wounds or picking off scabs that you thought you already healed. But it's under those places that we usually find the gems we need to really move forward. Step number 2, expose those roots, baby. Like, growing up, my mom used to pay us 10 cents per weed that we would get out of her garden. She would have us weed her garden. 10 cents per weed, but we only got the 10 cents if we got the whole weed out, all of it. Because it grows back. Make sure you're getting to the whole root of your problem and pull it out completely. If you don't pull the entire thing back, stuff will eat at you still. It will grow back. Excavate and examine so something healthier can grow in its place. This means finding and discovering triggers and things from your experience that maybe you haven't noticed, but they're a huge contributor to your healing process. Step 3, notice what blooms. And this step takes a lot of self-reflection, but it's really important in the unpacking process. Deep-seated traumas and issues related to shame show up in our bodies in different ways. Every single person is different, pretty much. How does it show up for you? Do you get an upset stomach? Does your mind start to spin and you can't focus? Do you feel humiliated, sad, or even angry in response to something or somebody? Identify those feelings, because those feelings are your first step to healing. Step number 4, nutrients and patience. Plants will continue to send nourishment to dead appendages. Basically, in essence, they deprive themselves of the nutrients they need to be big, healthy, and beautiful because they're trying to revive dead leaves and branches that have no way of coming back to life, but they don't realize that. We need to remove and deadhead. This step always reminds me to just remove the dead leaves and branches in my life that is no longer serving me. Deadhead that something or someone that is depriving you of growth. And number 5, plant maintenance. Plants are, oh, sorry, that was number 4. I'm going to do number 5. Oh, the lovely joys of recording. So, nutrients and patience, don't expect immediate results overnight. Here, let's just do this. Nutrients and patience, don't expect immediate results overnight. Because when plants shrivel because you forgot to water them, it takes them a few days to come back. You got to give yourself patience. If you start to finally give yourself the nutrients and patience you need to really grow, give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to be patient. Patience is the greatest nutrients of all when it comes to plants, people, all the things. And then, of course, plant maintenance. I just talked about this. I feel like we're having deja vu. You got to deadhead. Take the leaves off, take the branches off that are no longer serving you, so that energy can, in essence, go to the things that are thriving in your life that deserve all of your attention. Okay, sorry for that little side detour. So, in essence, the maintenance part of this is incredibly important, because clearing out old to make way for new is so crucial to our survival. You have to remove what's not working for you in order to have and welcome new energy and purpose into your life. So now I pose a question. What would this space look like for you, and how many lives could you impact, including your own, if you made the effort to create it? Listen, what I do with faces is not revolutionary. The safe spaces I create with speaking events, gallery exhibits, portrait shoots, podcasts, none of it costs money for me. They don't have special bells or whistles to make them what they are. The conversations don't require training or special talent. I mean, okay, I retract. They do. You have to be able to tap into your trauma and be able to be present and sit in that uncomfortable space. And that means doing work on yourself. You don't have to be healed, but you do have to be open to healing, because those conversations have the power to transform. And I am 100% proof of that. It's been 3 years since I've taken my own self-portrait, and over 200 faces later, proving that this is a space that all of us need to truly do the work on ourselves in order to expand and grow. I'm so proud of all of these courageous humans who've trusted me enough to expose their pain, sometimes in front of my camera, like here, in emails, online, if I see them at events. When you share an authentic moment in time with someone, why does this make me emotional every time? I've read this like 100 times, sorry. When you share an authentic moment in time with someone and you connect to each other's pain and you're able to hold that person's experience in the palm of your hands without letting anything slip through your fingers, a new connection is made. Ooh, this last part always gets me. I look back at the nervous, vulnerable, tentative human who started this project, and I am so proud of them. So proud of their courage to reach outside of their comfort zone and lean into the scary thought of taking their photo at a time when I had so little love for myself. I had the courage to take my own photo at a time. I had the courage to share my story of trauma and loss. I removed the mask that was created years before to protect myself from a world that was not ready for my pain, and created a safe space to connect in order to heal myself and hopefully connect with others. So what's it going to take for you to remove your mask and show us your face? Are you ready to dig deep and have the fortitude to be sure to get all the roots and sit in that uncomfortable space in order to heal and empower yourself towards growth? Listen, suicide prevention is something we can all participate in, but holding an authentic space for someone is something that takes intentional heart and care. It's a gigantic, brave space towards having the courage to be vulnerable and moving into your own power in order to make a difference in the world. And it's imperative not just for your mental health, but it can affect every single person you come in contact with. What will it take for you to make that space for yourself and welcome others to join you there in an effort to start healing and possibly even save a life? Woo, you guys got me emotional. Thank you.